Welcome to another episode of the Growth Compass. Shout out to our sponsor, Senders. If you want to do cold email deliverability correctly, you follow that link in the description. But without them, it wouldn't be possible to interview really interesting, amazing individuals like Ray McKenzie. What's going on?
All right. How you doing, Blake? Good to talk to you.
So awesome. This is so cool. So for the people that don't know, which I believe is everybody, I don't know why they would know, but Ray and I have been going back and forth for a while now about scheduling this episode. So I'm really excited to finally get into it because he's building some really interesting stuff. So Ray, if you could give a quick introduction of yourself and then also what you're building so you can get started.
Yeah, definitely. So Ray McKenzie, gosh, I'm based in Los Angeles metropolitan area, founder and CEO of StartingPoint. StartingPoint is a workflow automation and AI-enabled platform for professional services companies and teams, and is designed to do everything after you close clients. So, most of the time when people are closing customers, they've got the CRM, they've got the front end of the platform, they've got lead, demand gen, all those things, pipelines. But then once they close customers, the experience is pretty fractured. And so what we've done is we've built a tool that allows them to manage everything end to end to deliver services for clients. Background, the guy's 15-year corporate career with publicly traded and privately owned tech companies, flying across the United States every other week or two, and then started a management consulting firm 10 years ago. And so as my firm continued to grow, that's where I'd had the challenge in terms of needing a tool to help my company and my team deliver services. And then as I tried to use other tools that were out there in the market, none of them quite fit. And so we started building our own, and that's how it became StartingPoint in 2022. And so that's kind of the background. That's a quick and dirty spill of it.
Hey, that was great. So 2022. So it's been about 3 years now that you've been running StartingPoint, and you said did it spin out of? Are you still involved with that management consulting firm, or is it completely separate?
No, completely separate. It spun out of the consulting firm.
Okay.
And then I run StartingPoint full time. So it was something that it was a tool that we needed. We needed the transparency and visibility across our clients and within the firm. And then as I started showing it to other people or other firms that kind of are like ours, they were like, this is something we could use. And then once somebody tells you this is something that's they can use, then it's, will somebody pay for it? And then once somebody pays for it, then it's a matter of saying, how many more people can I find to pay for it? Because now you've got something that has some value in the market.
Yeah. So something that so before we get into that and your experience with that company growing it, because it sounds like a little bit of how you got your first customers, but something I love to explore with people is, so like you said, you had an extensive career, introduced you to a lot of experiences, a lot of things, a lot of flying, I guess, as well. And then this also isn't your first time running your own business. So there's a point that's of interest to me when an individual says, there's an opportunity in front of me to start a business, or maybe they don't even frame it that way, but there is still some decision that they make to make that jump, to leap into that pool of risk that entrepreneurship is. And so if you could pick two of your prior experiences, whether in that corporate career or whether during your management consulting firm, that you feel like prepared you to be the person that would take on this starting point.
You know what's interesting is my journey is a bit different, in terms of, I started my career as a back office person in IT. So I
Okay.
was a system administrator, network administrator. That's kind of what I thought my career was going to be. And then I kind of flipped. The first thing was kind of flipping that to working with clients and customers. So then I found out, and I had the ability to speak well, and convey kind of messages really well with clients and develop rapport well. So my relationships with clients, with coworkers, with team members, with customers was always really sharp. And so that was kind of one thing that's kind of an attribute of mine that I kind of am proud about to a certain extent. Then the next thing that kind of happened in my career was I had flown back from Europe on a trip, business trip, and I decided to take a day off work. And it was during the middle of the week, and Los Angeles is a very different type of culture than some of the places I had worked. So I had been between San Francisco, Washington, D.C. It's very, 7 in the morning, 6 p.m., things like that. I'm in Los Angeles, and next thing you know, it's Tuesday at 1 p.m., and there's a large amount of people enjoying their life. And so they're kind of outside at the beach having lunch. And I'm like, what is going on? Where are these people supposed to be? What's going on? Because if you're based in Philadelphia, if you go out during the work week, Monday through Friday, and it's 1, 2 p.m., people are either probably headed back to the office or they're headed home. They're not really out having lunch, just enjoying the day. Tuesday, 1 p.m. out here in Los Angeles, I'm like, where are these people coming from? Why are they just out here doing this? And so
Yeah,
the
of
next thing
course.
I sit at a restaurant and then I start talking with strangers and I'm like, what has you kind of, they're asking me what I do for a living. I'm asking them what they do for a living. And that's how they said, hey, we started our own companies. So
Wow.
then from there, I said, I left that lunch saying I want to start my own firm. And that's how I started my own consulting firm 2 weeks later.
2 weeks.
Then forward from there with Starting Point, it was more so I needed software to solve my challenge. And so I started building something and I was building it, framing it out, building, building, building. And then what I did was I started sharing it with other people. So, and I think that's one of the things that kind of stops some entrepreneurs is sometimes be vulnerable, like and say, this is what I'm thinking about, this is what I'm working on. Take a look at it and give me feedback. I then went out and shared it with probably 160 people in my network, just like across industries, different people. Some people got it. Some people were like, I don't get it. Some people didn't in that world. I just started showing it to people who would take meetings. And I was like, I'm just working on this thing. Can I show it to you? And this is the use case. And some people were like, oh, this would be great. If we'd had this in our company, it would be fantastic. Once I started hearing that, then I heard it more often than not. Then I started to say, I think I need to turn this into its own company.
Okay.
That's how Starting Point was kind of
Yeah,
created.
so I really think that that's a super valuable experience that you had, something that I think a lot of people will benefit from hearing in more detail how you went about navigating those conversations, analyzing the data you received, those things. But before we get there, I do want to talk more about the initial business where you said I want to start my own company for the lifestyle aspect of it, because I also feel like there's a lot of people that do that and a lot of people that don't end up doing it because of they started because they want the lifestyle, and then it gets hard, and then people are like, oh, I didn't know this is what it was going to buy. What about the people in the middle of the day, like at lunch? And so when you had a few questions about it, the first one being when you decided, okay, I want this life, I'm interested in this lifestyle and I want to start my own business to acquire it. Why was it a management consulting company from the beginning, and if so, why?
When I went to lunch that day, I didn't know. I didn't know what it was going to be.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
didn't know. I honestly didn't know. When I left that lunch, I did not know what it was going to be. I just said, I want to start my own company.
Okay. Yeah.
And my goal was selfishly, my thought was, I want to be the CEO of a company. How do I get there? And what's the fastest path to doing so? I left that day saying the fastest path to doing so was to start my own company. 2 weeks later, I got calls from two CEOs I knew in the past saying, hey, Ray, we need help within our companies. Can you come help? That led to what became a consulting firm. That's how I fell into it.
Really?
And the thought was, and understand that married kids, so life is busy for my wife and I. Our oldest son was playing basketball, playing a lot of club basketball, AAU basketball, and then we have kind of three younger ones at the time. Um,
Perfect time to start a
and
business.
and it was high risk, but it was also the one thing you can't get back is time. Okay. And so while he's trying to play travel basketball, and then we're traveling to Las Vegas, we're going to Arizona to play, we're all over Southern California, Northern California. Somebody's got to make those trips. And the only way I found myself being able to control my time was to control my own company. And so that was the added benefit of starting my own firm was how do I start to control my time? How do I start to control, the time I have with my family and the opportunities that they have, and then controlling who I work with and who I don't work with and what projects I work on. And that was 10 years ago. And so started what my consulting firm at that time, and that led into being able to spend the time with the family and being able to work with great people on great projects and being able to really take control of the time I was spending in my life. Then fast forward, started Starting Point, and all that's changed because now back to day-to-day business.
Yeah, yeah, right.
It is what it is what it is. But it served its definite purpose for that.
No, I love that, man. I think more, that just really fires me up because I think it's not only did you start it for reasons that I think are interesting and that I think appeal to a lot of people, which are the time, which are I want to enrich my life with the relationships around me, and entrepreneurship allows me to do that. But you also did it at a time in your life that was really difficult to do so, and you did it. That's awesome. And
Yeah, you think back on it and I don't really look at it like, hey, I did it. That's a good
yeah, yeah,
thing. I think more so one of those things that just kind of benefited our lifestyle at that time.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like our oldest son wanted to play basketball and wanted to play college basketball. Do what we got to do to get out there and make it happen. And I think most parents will understand that, which is parents or kids whose parents sacrifice for them to have the opportunities they need. I think it's just something that you want to give your kids and your family the best opportunity to achieve the things that they want to achieve.
Well, then we could take a second right now and just say, nice job, great job, great job doing that. Something I think last one on this management firm, because I think it's interesting what you're building now, but the idea of being able to control time, control the projects you work on, things like this. Was it always that easy, or were there moments where you said, I have to get this project done, I have to take this project on for the income? This entrepreneurship thing, it isn't, it is whatever challenge it was at the beginning. Like, how did you navigate those to ultimately
I think
successfully?
it's I think for almost any entrepreneur that's jumping into it, especially in a professional services capacity, it's difficult. You're going to run into times where there's going to be projects you kind of have to take. There's going to be times where there's going to be difficult clients that you're going to have to work with. Whether for one step or the other, whether it be, hey, this person is going to be a fantastic case study, even though they're tough to deal with, or it's going to be, hey, I need to have the income to be able to move to the next stage of my life. Those are obviously trade offs. You're going to have trade offs with everything. Like I know entrepreneurs that have said, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do this, and then they end up back where they were before they were entrepreneurs. And then I see people that have made, the sacrifice for multiple reasons to say, hey, this is what I've got to do to get there. And it's worked out for them in the long term. I think sometimes some things work, sometimes some things don't. But I think, it's a struggle. If you're an entrepreneur, you got to make sacrifices. It's going to identify every point of weakness that you have in terms of your ability to have business or do business or conduct business. It's going to expose it, and that's just how it is, and everybody has weaknesses.
Did you ever was it continually whatever style of services consulting business you ran, were the growth strategies continually network referral based, or was there ever like an outbound section of the consultancy?
It's primarily always been, I'd say there's two sectors to the business, two sides of it. So it started out, my firm originally started out as a kind of go to market operational excellence digital transformation firm, and we were doing a lot of work in private sector. So the cybersecurity cloud computing companies, marketing firms, things like that. But then I also started to build out a public sector side of it. So the public sector side was more so less, network based referrals and more so RFP, searching for standard biz dev, outbound emails, developing relationships with other firms. And
That was
so
all you?
that's well, yeah, to start, yeah, definitely.
Wow, grind.
Sure. First, the first 2 years was all private sector. And then I guess year three was really building public sector work.
Got it, got it, got it. Awesome. And so I was just gonna jump right into starting point, but I guess before we get back into there, if we could, because I am interested how you're going about that process of growing it, and it's interesting to hear that most of a lot of the growth tactics that you engaged with were you personally. I mean, that's again, you speak to it pinpoints your weaknesses and forces you to face them and stuff. I think outbound sales and growing and stuff definitely does that.
Oh man, sales was my primary weakness. It was my primary weakness. I mean, in my career, I started out, like I said, I started as a back office person.
Right, right, right.
Career grew, I was more of a service delivery support leader. So I never really had, and then I kept moving closer and closer to the sales side of things. but I was never completely 100% responsible for having to drive pipeline or drive sales. And so, when you jump into entrepreneurship, if you don't like to do that, you either need to hire somebody or you need to read a lot of books.
Right.
And I read a lot of books.
Good, good.
Fortunately, in my career, I've worked with some amazing sales leaders. So I always watched and kind of learned how they did things strategically. But watching, observing, paying attention to those people who have success, reading books, trying to figure it out, and then practice, practice, practice,
Nice.
and kind of what works and what doesn't work.
Nice. Well, so something that I think is cool that you said was that when you experienced this pain point yourself, you asked a couple other people, you said, huh, this is an interesting solution. And then you built, I guess, a prototype MVP version of this solution for Starting Point. And then you reached out to more of your network. I think something that's interesting that I want to hear your perspective on in the stage of a company is how do you sort through the different answers that you get? Because I think a lot of people at this stage search for affirmation that they're doing the right thing and they're not looking for actual, can this be a business? Is this a good idea? It's more so just like do people like my idea? Like are people going to tell me it's a good idea? So how did you go about legitimately, taking the responses you got and said this is something that I'm going to put my career onto?
Okay, so one thing that's interesting, I'll say this now, is opinion. There's one thing that's free, and that's people's opinions. So if you ask enough people, they're going to tell you what they think for free. Okay, so you don't have to pay for that. Now, how you sort through that is based around why you built it, what's your reason around building it, and who would be the people who would be knowledgeable to give you feedback on what you've built. So, for me, my tool it's not built for sales leaders. So, as I showed people in my network, sales leaders, my tool, they'd be like, "Yeah, I kind of get it, but it wouldn't be for me, and I don't know. I mean, maybe you can add this, maybe you can add this, maybe you can, add a dark mode to the software, maybe you could print things like that." But all of that kind of research leads you to who would use your tool or how they would use it, and getting more people you open it up to, the more feedback they'll give you. And it'll lead you down a path of finding who that target customer is, what size company, who would have a good experience with it and who wouldn't. And also just generally who understands it. Like if I'm showing my tool to somebody who's in manufacturing, they're more than likely not going to get it. They're just not going to get it. If I'm showing my tool to somebody who's like a sales engineer or somebody who's an implementation engineer, they're definitely going to get it. And so all of that research led to defining who that ICP is, who that target customer is, who that target industry is. I mean, I showed it to people who ran hospitals. They were like, this is not something that we use in like a clinical space or anything like that. But then you show people in maybe an administrative position inside the hospital, and it makes sense, and it makes sense for different departments. So all of that research kind of guides you into who is your target audience. It does suck hearing no,
Yeah,
it
right.
does. Hearing bad feedback is not good, but like I said, being vulnerable is more helpful for entrepreneurs than it's not.
Well, how long did you collect information for before deciding to do it?
Oh, I had already started building it because I needed it.
Ah, I see.
I
Okay.
needed it for myself, but to turn it into a viable product that I would sell to other companies and or people, 4 to 6 months.
4 to 6 months.
Yeah,
Was
four to
it
six months.
is that you building it? Did you partner with somebody to build out an application for it?
Yeah, so I started building it myself, and then I found I wasn't that great at it.
Okay.
And so I had a couple of partners from my consulting firm, a couple of firms that I knew and had relationships with. And so that's kind of, I contracted out to bring them in and say, hey, I need you guys to help me refine this idea and build it out. Best worst case scenario, I build it out and it's for my firm and we use it as kind of a proprietary software. Best case scenario, we build it out and it's become what it's become so far.
Yeah, look at that. So then I guess at what point would you say in the timeline, because you said about 3 years, at what point in the timeline was it an app that you started putting a brand around, putting a name on, starting to sell?
I think after that 6 month period of research,
Oh,
that's
okay.
when I started to actually build like the brand and the name and the language and things like that. And the first part of it, it wasn't flashy or wasn't easy. I was wrong. Like a lot of the marketing language, a lot of the how to sell it, what people hear, how to describe it, a lot of that was wrong too. So you do all that research, but then you've got to message it correctly. And it took a long time to message. It took about a good another 6 to 9 months to develop messaging that really got to people and said, "I get it."
And do you believe that messaging was because it just required more data, or the initial round of research, your conclusions weren't accurate enough? Where does that come from?
It's more so getting feedback from the buyers, feedback
Okay.
from buyers. Like the more you show it to people, they have them describe, tell me about this solution, and they just told me. Like this is how I would describe it. It was 3 to 5 questions about what we'd ask, take 20 minutes, maybe more, depending upon discussion. But it was mainly about, okay, now that you've seen it and you've seen the use case, tell me how you would describe this. Or tell me in less than 25 words. And then it just you kept getting responses, and as the responses started to become more similar, there you go with your messaging.
Awesome. So okay, so research, put out a product, you get it in people's hands, you're interviewing, you're getting opinions for free, and you're making sense of all of this information, and then you feel like you have finally 6 to 9 months after a tight understanding of positioning, potentially messaging. What are your approaches to growth, to growing? Is it your network? Is it inbound? Is it outbound?
I mean, our go to market strategy for the most part is kind of twofold. Like we do some outbound email outreach, and then also partners. Which is outbound outreach either through the sales team, and also through email, which has worked out relatively well, and then also partners. So getting the tool in the hands of partners who then can sell inside of their networks. So that's kind of the twofold in terms of our go-to-market strategy, and it's been working out relatively well and picking up more steam.
Awesome. And the partnerships, does that mean that you have the partners that have access to the software, and like in some dealer discount, and then they're able to bring business into?
Yeah, definitely. So partners have their own book of business. However large or small it is, they have their own book of business. Companies, the target ICP that we're targeting, they sell into that target ICP, and then they have the ability to go ahead and sell our solutions.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I think it's really awesome how you've been discussing the different strategies, how your experience growing these companies. These are two of my favorite questions to ask people. So I'm interested to hear what you say. First thing is, at the moment, with Starting Point and with your journey, what would you say is the biggest challenge that you're experiencing at the moment, and how could you frame it as an opportunity?
I think the biggest challenge is one. I mean, the biggest challenge is always sales. It's always sales. It's always sales, just getting in front of the right buyer amidst the noise. So there's a lot of competing solutions, adjacent solutions that are competing. So, trying to share that value of your solution above those other solutions. Now the benefit to that is there's a ton of different content that can be spun up to take advantage of that, and displace those other vendors, or provide value to your target buyers in different ways and things like that. So it's an immense opportunity. It's just a definite challenge for sure.
Got it. Awesome. And then finally, unrelated to that question about the opportunity stuff, and it can be small, it can be something specific that's happened recently, it could be something bigger that is overarching in your life. But I'm curious what inspires you.
Getting all the things I never had. That's probably it. I mean, I mean, I could say obviously family, kids, things like that. I think that's day to day. But I think for me, it's achieving the things that I didn't have exposure to growing up. Like coming from everybody comes from different backgrounds. Some people are introduced to entrepreneurship. Some people are introduced to, healthy families at times. Some people are introduced to, building rocket ships, being an astronaut, things like that. Some people are not. And then I think for me, it was almost every stage in my life, I've been able to meet somebody who opened an idea or doors. And then it pointed me in a direction of being like, hey, I want to do this. Hey, I want to do this. Hey, I want to do this. Where I didn't see that coming from where I came from. And so it's like, oh, you can do this. Oh, you can do this. You can do this. And then it just kind of kept following. And that's kind of it. I was never, growing up, I was never introduced to being an entrepreneur or being a software CEO or, being a consultant or things like that. That's not really the examples I saw.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Then being like, oh, you meet somebody who actually doing it. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I can do it. And I think that's the motivation.
That's what I'm talking about. Everybody hear that? Have Ray be that guy. Open that door up. You can do it.
It's just, I think based around people's life experiences, where they come from, the people they meet, the people they hang around, the opportunities that are afforded to certain people. I think it's a lot of people will say, I can't do that. But I think the inspiration for me is I've seen other people do things, and then I'm like, why can't I?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's the motivation.
Awesome. Ray, that is super cool. You inspired me, man. Inspired everybody. Come on. That's super cool. Well, thank you so much, man. I know you're doing a lot over there. You got a family, you got a business, you got all the lunches and nice things out there in California that you could be doing, and you spent the time here with me and with this community. So I appreciate that. If somebody's interested in reaching out or at least just staying on top of your journey, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, I mean, people can find me on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is obviously the easiest way. Ray McKenzie, I'm there. You can also email me. I'm always willing to take phone calls, always willing to talk to people. You can email me at ray@startingpoint.ai. And then obviously visit Starting Point at www.startingpoint.ai. And so that's kind of it. That's the best way to reach me. And I'm always open to talk to people.
Beautiful. Well, this was super cool. I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to the next one for the update.
Right.
Yeah, and I appreciate it, Ray. Thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me on, Blake. Appreciate it.
You
Great
got it.
conversation.
Thanks. Bye.